Good evening, HillmanTok. Welcome to Slay Student Loan Debt 101. My name is Natalie Jean-Baptiste. I'm an attorney, student debt relief advocate, and adjunct law professor. In this course, I will teach you how to manage and eliminate your student loan debt so that you can live the life of your dreams. I want to start by saying what an honor and privilege it is to be part of Panther Nation. Thank you so much to Dr. Barlow and the co-founders of HillmanTok University for creating this community. It is my prayer that what you learn here will change your life for the better. And without further ado, let's get into the first lesson. Let's start with my why. I do this because I believe your education should not be the reason that you're broke. We pursue higher education in the hopes that it would open doors for us and lead to bigger opportunities and higher income and creation of generational wealth. But a lot of times, the pursuit of a higher education has the opposite effect when we're burdened with massive amount of student loan debt. I want to share my story with you. So here's a picture of me at my law school graduation over 20 years ago. And on this day, I was so full of hope and optimism. Even though I had a ton of student loan debt, I really wasn't worried about paying it off. I had big dreams of working in the music industry, and I was able to get my foot in the door at some of the biggest record companies in the world. And I felt like I was going to be able to pay off my debt in no time. I was living my dream. I got to meet some of the most amazing people and just, I was on top of the world, but behind the scenes, I was struggling. So here are some of my favorite pictures from people I've met along the way. This is me and Usher. I was fresh out of law school. I was a baby. He was a baby. So this is one of my, favorites. Another one with me and Common. And then this is me and my boss, little Steven Van Zandt. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. He was on The Sopranos, but even before he started on The Sopranos, he was a guitarist for Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. So working for him, one of the perks was getting free tickets to the Springsteen shows. So I got floor seats and, I was living the dream, literally partying with rock stars. But again, like I said, behind the scenes, struggling with my student loan debt, struggling with debt in general. So I came to the decision that I was going to file for bankruptcy. So here I was, almost a decade out of law school, still broke, still struggling. And mind you, I had been making payments on my student loans religiously. So when I came to the decision to file for bankruptcy, I had consulted with several attorneys who told me that student loan was not dischargeable. So I understood that. And I ended up doing it on my own because I literally could not afford the legal fees. So I taught myself bankruptcy law and stumbled upon a rule called the undue hardship exception that no one told me about. But I learned that there is an exception to the general rule that you can't discharge student loans. And there's three factors, and I'll go into it when I do my bankruptcy lesson. But essentially, when I read it, I was like, well, this sounds like me. I'm going to give it a try. And even though seasoned bankruptcy attorneys told me I was wasting my time, I pursued it and eventually wiped out $120,000 in my own student loan debt. And after my success, I decided, well, I want to help other people. I thought, okay, maybe my case is a fluke, but I opened my own practice and I was able to have success for my clients as well. And I've been practicing bankruptcy law for over almost 12 years now. So I filed my case in 2013. So in addition to representing student loan borrowers and other people in debt, part of my mission is to educate people and empower you with the tools you need to advocate for yourself. This is one of my favorite quotes and always inspired me. from Dr. Maya Angelou. It says, when you get, give, and when you learn, teach. Because I believe that none of us is free until we're all free. And we have to help each other get there. All right, so this is the outline for the course. We're going to start with today's lesson, which is the fundamentals of student loans. Then next week, we'll discuss repayment options. Week 3 will be loan forgiveness. And week 4, we'll discuss delinquency and default and how to get out of default. And last but not least, my favorite topic, save the best for last, is bankruptcy and how to discharge your student loans in bankruptcy. I will be doing a bonus week on week 6, Wednesday, March 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll be doing a live Q&A where you guys can come in and I will answer your questions live and clarify anything that I covered that you're not clear on, or if you have a question about your particular situation, happy to answer that as well. Okay, so for today's lesson, we'll discuss the facts and figures. We'll talk about the different kinds of student loans. We'll look at the side-by-side comparison of federal versus private and help you figure out what kind of loan you have. And then finally, I'll tell you how we can work together in the future. First, the facts. Um, Student loan debt in America is at over $1.7 trillion. This is more than car loans, credit card debt, and any other consumer debt other than home mortgages. 1 in 5 adults have student loan debt. 43 million Americans are burdened with student loan debt, and it's the fastest growing debt. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the student debt crisis for Black women is even more, it's impacting Black women more than any other demographic. Everyone knows that Black women are the most educated demographic, but unfortunately, on the flip side, we are the most burdened with debt. And not only do we have the most debt, it's harder for us to get ahead because of the wage gaps, right? So, you know, for example, a woman with a bachelor's degree earns a median salary, a black woman with a bachelor's degree earns a median salary of just over 60,000, while a white man earns over 90,000 for the same degree. Okay, so now let's get into federal versus private. So these are a few of the things that are different if we're talking about federal versus private. The interest rate, the repayment options, the availability of loan forgiveness, the default consequences, and statute of limitations. And I'll get into the specifics of this. So with a private student loan, the promissory note is going to govern, right? And private student loans have a statute of limitations. This means that there's a time limit on how long the creditor or the lender can come after you for the debt. So in New York State, where I practice, the statute of limitations on debt is 3 years. So this means that if the debt is more than 3 years old, then the lender cannot pursue you. And the clock starts to run from the date of the last payment or from the date that the payment first became due. Okay? Private student loans do not have income-based repayment options or reductions. It's either you're going to pay it or it's going to go into default. If the loan is current and you have the means, just keep paying. Or if your credit is great, you can refinance the loan and get a lower interest rate. Private loans are usually co-signed by a parent or family member, and this could lead to extra complications, which I'll discuss later. Federal student loans are guaranteed by the U.S. Department of Education. There are flexible repayment options. There is loan forgiveness available, but on the flip side, there are serious default consequences, and I'll discuss what the default consequences are in the lesson on default and delinquency. So the three types of federal student loans, the main ones are FFPL loans, then we have direct loans and Perkins loans. The FFPL loans are issued by a private bank but guaranteed by the federal government. They're sort of a hybrid and they are no longer being issued. They have not been issued since 2010 when the federal government passed regulations stating that only the U.S. Department of Education can issue federal student loans. Direct loans are the ones that are issued directly by the federal government and the U.S. Department of Education. Even though the FFPL loans are no longer, if you went to school in the 90s or early 2000s, you still have FFPL loans most likely. Perkins loans were the loans for lower income people that were issued directly by the schools, and they were done away with in 2017. But again, some of you may still have Perkins loans, even though they're not currently being issued. Okay, so let's just look at some of the bigger differences between federal and private loans. So, first and foremost, the interest rates. Federal loans have lower interest rates anywhere between 4.99 and 7.5%. Private loans, on the other hand, can have interest rates as high as 15 to 20%. Um, Again, federal loans have flexible repayment options and loan forgiveness available versus private loans who don't offer either of those. Federal loans have serious default consequences. As some of you may know, they can garnish your wages, they can take your tax refund. So if you're in delinquency or if you're in default, you have to worry about those collection activities. You have collection powers that the private lenders don't have. So if you owe a private bank, the lender has to pursue you and win a judgment in court before they can garnish your wages or do anything to collect from you. Federal student loans do not have a statute of limitations. That means they can pursue you until the day you die. Sadly, it's one of the only things that there's no statute of limitations for. So that it falls in the same category as murder, treason, and environmental crimes, which is insane, and that shows you how problematic the student loan system is. Like I said, private student loans, depending on which state you live in, there's a certain number of years that they can pursue you for the debt. You can just look up wherever you live, just put statute of limitations on debt collection in Florida or Texas or Massachusetts, whichever state you live in, to figure out what the statute of limitations is. Federal student loans are not tied to creditworthiness. So there's no cosigner required, and a lot of times people take on their first student loan when they're not even old enough to drink, and some people as young as 16 or 17 if they graduate high school early, which is another problematic thing about student loans is because people, when you sign up for these loans, you have no idea what you're really getting into. Private student loans are usually require a cosigner, so it's usually signed by a parent or family member, and that can be problematic because when you cosign a loan or someone cosigns for you, there's joint and several liability. That means that the lender can come after either or both of you. So, um, parents, grandparents, aunties, it can cause, family drama if the student defaults on the debt. Okay, so this is just a slide with different examples of federal versus private loans. Some of the ones I mentioned earlier, direct, FFPL, Perkins, plus loans. Private loans are with the private banks like Discover, Citizens, Wells Fargo, or the fintech lenders like SoFi and Earnest. And occasionally there will be private loans issued from the school. Okay, so now we have to figure out the first thing you need to do in order to be able to tackle this debt is to identify what type of loan you have. Okay, so first things first, you would go to studentaid.gov. That's where you would create an FSA ID if you don't already have one. And then you log in, and studentaid.gov is where all the information about your federal student loans is housed. So that's where you would find, the loan amounts, interest rates, who your servicer is, what the loan balances are, which income repayment you're in, the status of the loan, everything you need to know about your federal student loans is there. If the loan is not in this database, then likely it's a private loan, and you can get that information on annualcreditreport.com. This is another slide on the dashboard on student.gov, and you can look at the details. But again, like I said, annualcreditreport.com. That's where you can get a free copy of your credit report from all three of the reporting agencies. And if the loan is on this but not on the studentaid.gov report, that means it's definitely a private loan. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much lesson number one. And again, the first step is to determine what type of loan you will have, figure out who your servicer is, figure out what type of repayment loan you have, what your balance is, and how long it would take you to pay it off and the different repayment options and whether or not it's even feasible. Okay. And now I'll just tell you a little bit about the services that I offer. I help people who are being sued by private lenders and help you negotiate a settlement or defend you in a lawsuit or help you draft pleadings if you are being sued. I also do document preparation for applying for some of the federal relief programs like forgiveness, enrolling in an IDR plan, things of that nature. And last but not least, I assist with bankruptcy, Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, filing the petition or preparing the petition and schedules, as well as the pleadings for the adversary proceeding, which is the process that you need to initiate in order to ask the court to discharge a student loan. I invite you all to book a free discovery call with me where we can talk about your freedom plan, your student debt freedom plan to get you out of debt. You just go to slaystudentloandebt.com and you hit the green button and you just put in your information and we will talk one on one and you can ask me specific questions about your situation. This is my contact information. If you'd like a copy of this slide deck, just email me at the address listed there. And again, just to remind you, I'm an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. So the information provided to you today is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. An attorney-client relationship is not created by your attorneys. And that's my contact information again. So thank you so much for being here. And again, thank you, HillmanTok, for creating this community. And I look forward to working with you guys. And I hope to see you on the live Q&A on March 12th. And I look forward to helping you get out of this debt and take control of your life. Have a good night.